just getting out in the woods where there's nothing there's no bathrooms, there's no cell reception, there's no just you're just in the woods with the bears, hopefully some deer and some antelope and some moose that don't come too close. And it's this 80-kilometer loop where once you start, you've got to finish or backtrack. And it's in the Silver Peak, the mountains. I had a Texas brokerage offered full price what I valued the business at, and the cultural fit wasn't right. And he turned it down.
So many business owners wrap their identity around their business because they become their business. Welcome back to the show. We have a very special guest with us today. Norma Rawlings has a BA in French, a JD in law, and an MBA in business administration. Wow, there's some letters there. She has spent the past 21 years in the real estate industry in various capacities, from commercial and industrial developer to multi-residential to portfolio owner to property manager to strategic asset management. With her legal and business background, she has consulted over the years to numerous companies and individuals looking to sell their businesses. She brings a mediator's mentality to the table and enjoys helping people plan their own succession and organize the sale or purchase of their business in a mutually beneficial fashion. She believes that finding the right fit between buyer and seller is absolutely critical. Couldn't agree with her more. So good. And she does her best to ensure every difficult issue doesn't dissolve into conflict. She recently published a new book titled The Complete Guide to Buying and Selling Your Real Estate Brokerages, which will put the links and all the details to where to get that below. And when not working, Norma can be found hiking the woods, which we've just had a chat about, which we're going to dive in a little bit more, and at the rink watching her boys play hockey, or on the court watching her girls play volleyball or playing with them. She enjoys exploring, then writing about her adventures, and always appreciates a good book. Norma, honored and privileged for having you on the show. Thank you so much.
Ditto. It is, you are a bit of a legend. I think you're up at, 110 episodes or some crazy number?
Yep. Yes.
That's
yes.
dedication.
Now, we've just been chatting before the show about an amazing event that you're about to embark on. And I want to sort of unpack that a little bit more. Tell us about what's coming up this weekend.
So about 4 years ago, James, I moved from the Greater Toronto area, which is Canada's largest city by a country mile. Like it's about 6.5 million people in the region, to a little town of 200,000 called Sudbury, because I have 4 children, and my 2 oldest are twin boys, 20 years old, and they were both drafted to the Sudbury Wolves OHL team, which in Canada, we live and breathe hockey. So the whole family, because it was post-COVID, the whole family moved up because I can work from anywhere. And in moving there, it's in northern Canada. So all of a sudden, there's all these trails, and I'm cross-country skiing, and I'm hiking, and I'm snowshoeing, and I'm swimming in the lakes all the time, and I'm doing all these things that the Greater Toronto area doesn't really inspire. And I met a really good girlfriend who is the mom of one of my boys' teammates. And so she is similar to you, although not quite as crazy. She'll go on like 100-kilometer bike rides, right? Not runs, but bike rides. And so she got me into cycling, and, it just kind of evolved. So she and I were chatting last summer. And of course, last summer was a long way from this summer. And I said, wouldn't La Cloche Silhouette in Killarney Provincial Park be a fabulous trail to do sometime? And it's this 80-kilometer loop where once you start, you've got to finish or backtrack. And it's in the Silver Peak, the mountains, all sorts of crystal and limestone and forest and black bears and mosquitoes and ticks and all sorts of things. And so a year ago, I said, let's maybe think about doing this. And of course, Nancy, because she's crazy like you, goes, absolutely, let's do it. And so we, of course, book a date. Well, it's now for this Friday. And so I'm completely terrified because I've never done anything similar, and also exhilarated because I believe that as we grow older, it's really important that we sort of do something that scares us, not irregularly, right? Like on a regular basis, you need to sort of push yourself out of your comfort zone. But I am way out of my comfort zone. And I just today bought a Garmin satellite phone because I thought, if I get out there, my folks are saying, you're going to die out there. And I'm saying, I better have a
Thanks
phone.
for the inspiration.
Yeah, exactly. I better have a phone so I can like text them to say I'm still alive and I will hopefully be home in, 2 or 3 days. So we booked it for 6 days, 5 nights. And my girlfriend says, Norma, we can easily do 50 miles in 4 days and 3 nights. And so Lord knows how it's going to go. I have a pack that is full of stuff and I have to figure out how to purify my own water because of course you're getting it from the lakes there. So I have charcoal filter, I have tablets that go in the water to purify. And I talked to a camping guy yesterday and he said, Norma, I wouldn't drink anything unless you boil it first. And I'm thinking, how am I going to manage all of this? So it's going to be quite an adventure. And then, of course, we have mosquitoes, ticks, deer flies. So I've got all sorts of DEET laden spray, which is totally, not advertised anymore. And he said, you need as much DEET percentage as you can get, and you need to slather it on you as if it's baby oil. So we will see. We will see if I survive, James. So it's good we're doing our podcast now because a week from now, I may still be in the bush. I don't know. So you
Oh,
said
that's
you did
brilliant.
something similar and survived. So that gives me some faith.
Yep, that's brilliant. I have a little laugh because I know the internal thoughts sometimes that one goes through before doing these long events. All the questions, all the concerns, all the what am I doing? I'm excited. I'm fearful. What is that internal dialogue going for you at the moment? Is it excitement? Is it fearful? What are you saying to yourself? What are some of those things that's going on through your mind at the moment around the event?
So my parents think I completely cracked. So that's just, that's just their basic theory. They're like, you are too old and you have 4 children. And what are you doing? My girlfriend is totally jacked and excited because again, she's like you. She loves to go out for 4-hour bike rides. So my personal is I'm looking forward to the nature, right? Because nowadays with cell phones, and Australia is interesting because you've banned the use of them under 16, which is fascinating, and you're sort of a trailblazer for the world as the world sort of deals with this issue. But you have children, I have children. My children have the best time when they are out with their friends, playing a sport, hanging out, doing stuff that's active in nature with the sunshine. That's the best times that they have. We go to a music festival every year called Boots and Hearts. Outdoors, 20 artists in 3 or 4 days. Like that's when they have their best time. And yet so much of kids' time is spent on electronics. And so I'm looking forward to the nature aspect of it, right? Just getting out in the woods where there's nothing there's no bathrooms, there's no cell reception, there's no you're just in the woods with the bears, hopefully some deer and some antelope and some moose that don't come too close. Hopefully, not a lot of mosquitoes and ticks and deer flies. But again, I'm being, way too optimistic because end of July in Canada, there'll be all those things. But yeah, that's what I'm most looking forward to is that ability to just breathe it in and feel grateful that we have such beauty in nature. I know that Australia is a phenomenal place to live, like just a phenomenal country from a topographical and sort of environmental point of view, and Canada's the same. There's just this
So beautiful.
bounty of beauty in the woods, and so I'm excited about that, and then on the same time I'm absolutely terrified I will not be able to do any of the things I need to do. How do I get my sleeping roll inflated? How do I get it deflated back in the backpack? Because of course the backpack is going to be packed the first day, and the second day I have to pack it in. How, is the sleeping bag going to be warm enough? Because Canada, this time of year, it goes down to not
It's cold.
freezing, but it's
It's
cold.
cold.
Like I'll need
Yeah.
long johns in the middle of July, right? And so all of those worries that and the camping store guy said, water, you need to make sure you have enough water. Like you need to have a 10-liter thing of water and you need to boil it. And there's these tablets you have to put in it. And these charcoal filters, they don't work well enough that you should trust them. And so it's all of that. It's all the uncertainty. So
And
I'm
I
anxious and excited at the
love it.
same time.
I love it because, yes, as I said, I can understand and appreciate that internal dialogue and the ups and downs, and I wanted to start with that because I think it's so relevant about getting outside of your comfort zone, pushing yourself, finding new challenges, finding new opportunities. However, I think when we buy and sell businesses, a lot of the buyers and a lot of the sellers go through those same emotional roller coasters of those mixed emotions. Am I doing all those questions as well? And I think that's what's your superpower, is because you can understand that and help them to guide that through that process. So would that be fair to say when people are buying and selling real estate, they have all those mixed emotions, those questions, and that's where your expertise comes into place because you can understand that?
It's a brilliant segue. I hope so. I hope that I'm able to help them. I love what I do because I deal with entrepreneurs every day. So, and the entrepreneurial
So they're
personality
crazy
is
cats, right? They're crazy cats,
it's
entrepreneurs.
yes, but I'll give you an example and you'll identify with this. So on a Monday, the real Remax purchase is announced. Okay. And so I have some Remax real estate brokers who are clients of mine. And so on Monday, there's uncertainty. By Wednesday, they're trying to figure out all the opportunities that are now in front of them because of this acquisition, James. And that mentality is truly to be treasured because so many people in life happens to them, right? And entrepreneurs, they happen to life. Like it's the exact opposite where there's constantly this trying to find opportunity, this trying to figure out what's best for the business, trying to figure out what's best for their agents, for their family, it's a fabulous personality trait. So because of that, I love what I do. I love acting as a sounding board for entrepreneurs. I love sharing their journey. I run my own business myself. It's fabulous. And when someone goes to sell their business after 10, 20, 30 years of building it, there's tremendous emotion at play because you've created this entity outside of yourself. And a lot of the people that sell businesses that I know, and we touched on this a little bit about in the bio about the cultural fit. I had a Texas brokerage offered full price what I valued the business at, and the cultural fit wasn't right. And he turned it down. And when you explain that to someone who's not an entrepreneur, they say, I don't understand. You valued it at 2 million. They offered 2 million. What is the problem, Norma? And I say, he made the right decision. It was exactly the right decision because if the cultures don't mesh and if the people behind the businesses aren't compatible and have like compatible character, personality, approach to the business, it's ultimately going to fail. And it's not like you're buying a used car or a used, as we were talking about earlier, sailboat. You're buying something where you're going to be in business with the person you're buying from for a good year minimum, and usually 2, 3, 4 years, going forward. And so you have to find that mutually beneficial arrangement and that cultural connection, or forget it. It's not going to
Mm.
work. So yes, I agree with
That
your
is
segue.
such a
There is
beautiful
some
point.
similarities.
That is a beautiful point because I think a lot of people miss that point. They just see the dollars and they don't understand that cultural fit. And I'm sure you've had some many stories in the past where people don't realize. And I think that coming back to your superpower and your expertise, where you can see that because it is a important aspect for yourself and aligning those values. I'm really intrigued, how do you identify it? How do you find that to ensure that is a fit from buyer and seller when they go through that process on that cultural aspect? What do you do? How do you gauge that? How do you unpack that? What's your strategy around that?
So it's a lot of, I think you have some background in DISC. Is that right? Okay. A lot of EQ
Yep.
and IQ.
Love
So
it.
what we look at is we say, okay, is the commission plan compatible? And that's sort of an IQ piece, right? Where if you're going to transition agents, and in a real estate brokerage business, the value's in the agents. It's not in the computer system. It's usually not in the technology. It's not in the desks, right? It's in the people. And they walk in and out of the door every day, and they don't have to come back to you the next day. And so if you're going to successfully transition agents, you have to have the IQ piece of the commission plans and the production levels, and sort of the way they approach the business has to be similar. buyer to seller. The EQ piece is more, how does the broker treat the agents? What emotional needs does the broker meet of those agents? Because agents have lots of choices. And so there's a reason that the agent is with that broker. And that's the more visceral piece that I think it takes you a few transactions to really appreciate. And it's when you put two people together that aren't compatible that you realize what you did wrong, right? It's the mistakes where we learn more than the successes. And so I think just over the last 4.5 years of doing this specific business, I've become better at it. But when a broker comes to me and says they want to sell, I'll often say to them, if you were to go work for somebody else, which of your competitors would you consider? Because that's a
Great
great
question.
sell. Because it makes
Great
them think,
question.
okay, there's not a hope in heck that I would ever work for Joe, right? I really like Charlene. Andrew's a good guy, but I could never work for him. So it forces them
Great
to
question.
give me insight into what companies who are their competitors would they consider working for. And then those people become prospects for buying. Because if the broker would be comfortable, then theoretically the agents would be comfortable. So it's part art and part
Brilliant.
science.
Brilliant. I love that question. That is a really great question because it opens up an inquisitive mindset from the seller, but it also gives you an indication of what are the prospects out there for me to have a conversation with, which is beautiful.
And it sort of gives you an insight into how they want their legacy to continue. Because
Yes.
it's not just a sale and leave. It's a sale and watch my business hopefully grow after I've sold, or at least continue to serve the agents the way that I have as the broker owner. So there's a lot of, I mentioned earlier, a lot of emotion in it. A lot of their life is in it. You think about midnight phone calls on Saturday that they have to take from their agents when a deal is faltering. They point person for that. And that is sort of an extraordinary commitment that every entrepreneur makes to be available to their business when they might want to be just hanging out with their family on a Saturday night watching a movie. So it's a very deep rooted feeling that they have that they want their business to continue generally. And others say it's a
So
privilege.
true.
It's such a privilege working with business owners.
And I guess because besides the terms and conditions and the process and all that kind of stuff, but it's also as you said, the emotional, the EQ side of things of helping them going through that process at the same time. Because what I've found over the years is so many business owners wrap their identity around their business because they become their business. And what I've seen is because I've worked with a lot of businesses over here in the purchases, and when those owners are selling that might have had it for 10, 20, 30 years, they are known as Mr. or Mrs. Real Estate Agent or Mr. and Mrs. Real Estate Agent, agency owner, brokerage owner. And that's their identity. So then getting them to actually look at if they're going to continue on, buying and selling real estate or do a different path, it's that emotional roller coaster they go through of making them aware that they wrap their identity around that. And maybe they need to do some change work to then go, well, I'm more than just this real estate brokerage. How do you find that when you're talking to these sellers that they wrap themselves around this identity piece?
100%. And it's fascinating because if they have the self-awareness to know that, then what you say to them is, what do you want to do with your business after you've sold? And then you can sometimes craft some fabulous win-win scenarios. So we have a lot of brokers who will say to me, Norma, I don't want to manage another employee in my life, but I love to sell real estate. So those ones, the perfect transition is you sell and you stay with the business and you sell your business, stay with it and just sell houses. Brilliant. That's a phenomenal situation for both the seller and the buyer, because the buyer then has the seller around to be the mentor, to be the person the agents are comfortable with. She hasn't left. It's great continuity. And to your point, the seller has something to do with the business still, even though they don't own it. Another role that they'll take on is mentor coach. So a lot of owners are really successful because they're able to mentor and coach their agents to succeed, which I know is sort of the premise of your podcast is how do you help agents succeed, right? And so they're really good at that. And if they continue to do that for the business, again, it's a win-win because they have a reason to go into the office every day or every second day and help the agents. And the new owner's delighted because of that continuity. The odd broker, James, will say to me, I don't want to darken the door, Norma, when I sell. I don't want to go in. I want nothing to do with it. I just want to ride off into the sunset. And oftentimes it means a move of state or spending all my time with my grandkids and that to your point about it being emotional, that's a legitimate feeling and that's okay. What I find though is entrepreneurs as a group need to stay engaged and busy or they don't thrive. So I always encourage them to try to figure out what their role looks like post sale. Because I'm sure in
Right.
your coaching business, you see a lot of prior owners who are sort of floundering because they no longer have, as you said, that identity, right? They were the owner of, and now they're not. So I'm privileged to have my parents still alive, and both of them are going strong and still involved in business with me. And like if you have a reason to get up, you don't necessarily want to work 7 days a week like entrepreneurs do when they start out. But if you're needed 3 days a week or 2 days a week, then that's the perfect transition for that broker seller.
Love that. Love that. What do you see for those buyers and sellers that don't use you or don't use someone like yourself? Is their biggest mistakes? One, obviously, the biggest mistake is not using you, obviously. But where do you see they drop the ball that they fail in that transaction?
That's funny. It's the for sale by owner. It's the for sale by owner pitfalls. It's the exact same conception when you have a house as when you have a brokerage in so many ways. If you are trying to sell it yourself, first of all, you make a phone call and you risk the person you just called telling everybody he or she knows James is looking to sell. And then that creates uncertainty and insecurity when your agents hear about that. And I don't know about you, James, but the real estate industry, if you want something to be known far and wide by dinner time, you just tell 3 people who are prominent that it's a secret at 7 a.m. And literally, don't you find, like, right? How many times has someone called you and said, James, you can't tell anybody, and then they tell you everything that they weren't supposed to tell you, right? So that's I think the biggest risk is that your business as a real estate brokerage owner lives and dies with your agents. And so if you're going to be letting people know you're looking to sell, agents hate change. So all of a sudden they start looking around at options and they're far more open to recruiting pitches because they know you're leaving. And so that's probably one of the biggest pitfalls, but it's all of the for sale by owner stuff. It's how do you know the value of your brokerage, right? That's not your business. You don't know what your brokerage is worth. You might have a ballpark, but a range of, between 3 and 500,000, 300,000 is a lot different from 500,000. And being able to justify 500,000 or finding out it's actually worth 6 is valuable. And so when you bring in an expert, it's the exact same as when you're doing a for sale by owner versus a professionally staged, marketed, sold home. So those are the analogies.
So talk to me about your book because it's very exciting. Where did the inspiration come from? Where did the need come from? Yeah, give us a snapshot of where did that inspiration come from your book and what the book is about.
So my business partner is named Wayne Einhorn, and Wayne and I we did our MBA together, and that was 25 years ago. And so Wayne and I would sit together, and he has a really great sense of humor. And he would make me laugh on a constant basis throughout the entire program. And so when we went to write a book, I had written a book in my earlier years. And I said to him, okay, what does this book look like? And he said, Norma, I have to admit something. I don't read a book unless it has pictures in it. Pictures in it. Okay. So James, it was brilliant because our book has pictures in it and it has symbols and ideas and thoughts presented visually in addition to in writing. And it literally gives you a 10-step guide to how to look at buying or selling a real estate brokerage. So it sort of takes you from not knowing anything about it to sort of 50%. It still doesn't mean you should FISBO your brokerage, but it at least lets you know the process, right? So you want to value it first. Then you want to figure out who your what your objectives are in selling. And then you want to figure out who would be compatible to buy. Like there's just step by step how you go about selling your brokerage, or flip side, buying a new brokerage. So that is hence the book, The Complete Guide to Buying and Selling Real Estate Brokerages, 10 Steps to Success. And thanks to Wayne, it is a very easy read because it is full of pictures.
Fantastic. Fantastic. No, I really appreciate your energy, your expertise, and your time today for being on the show. And I want to say best of luck for your event. I can't wait to actually get you back on the show and let's debrief the event, because I'm sure there's going to be some amazing stories. And thank you for your expertise on taking the buyers and the sellers and making them aware of there are many different steps to that process, not just a transaction, but understanding the emotional side, the EQ side of buying and selling business. So thank you once again for being on the show.
My complete pleasure, James. And just so I know, when is your next Ultra event?
Haven't booked anything as yet, just working through a couple of injuries at the moment. I did have something planned for later in the year, but I've had to postpone that. So that's the joys, unfortunately. One of getting old. I'm 50 in a couple of weeks, so and dealing with injuries. But yeah, there's a few things on the radar over the next little while.
That is fantastic. Well, there's a really great Ironman competition in Muskoka, Canada, that I would recommend. It is one of our prettiest parts of the country, and because we do business in America and Canada, and I'm from Canada, Muskoka is gorgeous. So if you're looking for an event and your daughter's going to be in Missouri, it's not that far to duck up and to do that Ironman.
Sounds good. Thank you, Norma, once again.
Thank you for having me on.